So welcome again. My name is Dr. Elena Caprioni. I'm the program director of the Asian Business and Management program at York University. I'm Italian Canadian. I have red and curly hair. I'm wearing a blue shirt, and my pronouns are she and her. It's my pleasure to be here with you today. Before we begin, please note that the captions and the transcripts are available for this session. You can access them by clicking the options on your screen. And if you're using the transcript, please remember to save them before you close the session. Otherwise, you lose them. Okay, so although we're not in the same location, I assume we have people from all over Canada. We must recognize that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories upon which York University campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. And the area known as Caronto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Adonisini Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It's now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. And we acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation. And the territory is subject of the Dish with One Spoon, One Pond Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. Okay, so we're here tonight for our online panel focused on community, which is part of a big series designed really to reduce the stigma and support inclusion for people with disability in the Asian Canadian communities. In the last few days, we had panels focus on education, on employment, on the role of culture in the context of disability in Asian Canadian communities. But today's event is focused on community support. It's actually called Community Support with People with Disability in the Asian Canadian Community. And it really spotlights cultural, social, and structural challenges, and we're going to hear tonight from different panelists, which have different roles in our society. Like, we're going to hear from community leaders, from non-profit representatives / therapists, and also from individuals from big corporations. They're going to share, as we always did in the previous panel, they're going to share stories and what's happening, and then we're going to end maybe with an action to make our world more inclusive. Before we begin, let's go over a few housekeeping rules. So give me 1 second. I'm going to share a slide. And I'm going through the housekeeping rules. Okay, so as I said before, live captions and transcripts are available. Please click on it if you need it. Then we'll have the panel, and then at the end of the panel, we have a session for Q&A session. So if you have a question, if you have any questions or comment, please write them in the chat box. We're going to monitor it, and then we'll be sure that your question will be answered. Please mute yourself to avoid background noise. But if you don't want to type, feel free during the Q&A session to ask questions. Now, the session will be recorded and then will be also posted on the website of the North Star Special Needs Society. I'm going to share the website later, and then please check it, because we're going to put all of the recording of these panels, but also different kind of resources. Keep in mind that the session is recorded, so if you don't want your name to be seen, please change your name by clicking on the 3 dots on top of your screen, and then click on rename. Then if you have any technical issue, connect with Gina Kwan, our research assistant, via chat box, and also write down this email abmp@yourq.ca. In case you got kicked out or you have any technical issue, please write a note and Gina will reply to you. All right, so now let's move to the next step, which is that before we start our panel, we also want to know who we're talking with. So I'm going to launch a quick poll at the beginning to ask you a few questions about who you are and how much you know about this topic. So okay, here we are. All right, so we have 3 questions. The first one is, what best describes your role or perspective in attending this panel? Answers are person with disability, family member or friend, educator or school professional, employer or workplace leader, health or social service provider, community leader or ally, policymaker or government staff, general interest, student or researcher. Then the second question is, how knowledgeable are you about community resources for Asian Canadians with disabilities? And then you can reply from 0 to 5. 0 is that you're not knowledgeable at all, and 5 is that you're very much knowledgeable about the community resources. And the third question is, how confident are you in identifying or using strategy to support Asian Canadians with disabilities in your community? And again, we can reply from 0 to 5. 0, you're not confident at all, and 5, you're very confident. Please take a minute to reply, and then I'm going to share the result with everybody. Okay. So in terms of participants, we have person with disabilities, family members, educators, employer, people working in the health sector, general interest, and a lot of students. And then people are not very knowledgeable about the community resources for Asian Canadians. Majority of them replied 1. And then again, the participants are not too confident on identifying different strategies to support Asian Canadian communities. Majority of them replied 1. Okay, I'm going to end the poll, and then you can hear this result. Okay, can I stop sharing? Okay. All right. So now let's go ahead. Thank you for reply. So now let's start with our panel. I guess that I'm going to start by introducing our moderator, Eileen Lam. Eileen is an activist, artist, community organizer, and educator dedicated to advancing disability and racial justice. She's also a session assistant professor in critical disabilities at the School of Health Policy and Management at the Faculty of Health at York University. And now let's begin.
Hi everyone, great to see all of you. I am Elaine Lam. So I'm an Asian woman with black hair and red glasses, wearing a purple top covered by the floral pattern. I wear flower clothes today because I think we often feel, talk about the issue of disability. Sometimes we feel stressful, sometimes we feel a lot of pressure. So that's why I really hope, like by wearing a nice, beautiful, like energetic flower can also like bring everyone have the energy. Particularly, this is really my honor to be here, to be the moderator as a migrant and settler. I think this is very important to acknowledge like colonialism is as we should not perpetrate settler colonialism, and also we are often as Asian migrants we are being told we must assimilate into whiteness. But I think this is not true, and I think this is very important because I'm in this indigenous land, so that is my responsibility. Keep learning, so how to support and also be the allies to commit to decolonization and indigenous justice. And this is really my honor to be here, be the moderator of the panel, particularly this week is the National Accessibility Week. And also this month is the Asian Heritage Month. So the how we can build a community, how we can not only create more inclusive society, but also bringing the justice, including racial justice, disability justice, how to celebrate and honor our Asian heritage, but also recognize the important contribution of the Asian community here. So I am so excited. We have amazing speakers from different sector. We're going to share the insights, knowledge. And so this is the space we want to bring different people together to share the knowledge, share the experience and idea. We may come from different background, may have very different idea, but it's most important we may not need to agree with each other, but it's very important how we inspire, we can learn from each other. And I know like sometimes webinar and Zoom is like not always enjoying, but I really, really hope you will enjoy tonight because it is my honor. I met some of the panelists already. It's really amazing. And so I would like to invite them one by one. And so maybe I will first introduce Yin Brown. Yin Brown has been an advocate for equal access and opportunities for persons with disabilities since 2009. When she returned to Toronto from teaching abroad, Yin is project coordinator for Disabled Women Network Canada in Toronto. Previously, Yin has worked at CNIB as the Manager Advocacy for Ontario and at CBM Canada as the Advisory Coordinator. Yin has also been serving on the Board of Directors of Ontario Council for International Cooperation since 2011. She is also currently the Toronto chapter president of Alliance for Equality of Blind Canadians and the co-chair of City of Toronto Accessibility Advisory Committee. Amazing, Ayin. I have learned a lot from you with our previous conversation already. Will you introduce more about yourself and particularly related to disability and also the Asian community? Thank you, Yin.
Okay, so again, I'm Yin Brown, and you'll see that my name is Brown. That's not a very Asian name. I am Chinese. Brown is my married name. Pronouns are she and her. I do look Asian with short, I don't know what kind of color, dark brown, maybe black. I dye my hair, so I think it's dark brown hair, and I'm wearing I think it's a yellow shirt. I say think because I am blind. I wasn't born blind, but gradually over the sort of period of 20, 25, 30 years, I just gradually lost my eyesight. So now I am totally blind. I've worked, yeah, extensively in community work, both overseas, but also in Toronto. Really enjoyed it, but currently, thanks for all the bio, the sort of list of experiences. Right now, I do work at George Brown College, so as their manager for accessibility, inclusion, and AODA compliance. So that's where I sit, but I am very, very passionate about just helping people with disabilities to really gain that confidence and build that community for peer support. That's it for now. I'll say more later. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. We are looking forward to learn more from you. And so the next speaker I would like to invite Yumi Han is active involved in disability advocacy, particular with the Alliance for Equality of Blind Canadians and the Toronto Disability Pride March. We love to learn more about the Pride March, Disability Pride March. Okay. Her work is rooted in a strong commitment of accessibility, human rights, disability justice. She is particularly interested in advancing peer led and community based mental health care and support system. She is a doctoral student in the Science and Technology Studies program at York University. Yumi, thank you so much for joining today.
Hi everyone. So my name is Yunmi. So I have like short, dark, I guess dark brown hair. I also dyed my hairs, but I kind of forgot. So that is my feature, and I have an Asian feature, and like has a round glasses. Wearing round glasses, and yes, so I I am what I'm doing in basically it's mostly community organizing. So and I also identify as a person with disability. I am born partially sighted and have a visual disability. So I was involved in disability communities in South Korea when I was back there, and here in Canada. So I met Ian Brown there. Yeah, she was a great mentor, and I met at an AEBC, Alliance for Equality of Blind Canadians, and also I'm organizing committee at Toronto Disability Pride March. So my passion is like building a community for disabled and blind people. Also, people who are at the intersection, like who has both like for racially marginalized and also have disabilities. So I'm very like passionate about connecting, finding some space for people, yeah, who are at the intersection of those spaces. Also, I do a lot. Because I'm in school, so I do a lot of research. So I'm also disability academic. So I'm interested in research and reading a lot of books about disability studies and policy, equality, mental health sectors, and technology too. Nice to meet you. Or and it's a very like honor to be invited in the panel.
Thank you, Yumi. And I would like to introduce Candice Lin. She is Director of Clinical Service and Community Education at Hong Folk Mental Health Association, a leading ethnocultural community mental agency in Ontario, communicating her extensive experience working with Asian youth and families therapeutically and in community. She has also taught at the OASW, like the Ontario Association of Social Work, on topics of anti-Asian racism at York University School of Social Work, and also the field educator of University of Toronto. And Kenneth is passionate and also have the vision and practice of using individual and family psychotherapy as a path toward collective liberation from ongoing violently oppressive structures. Thank you, Kenneth. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Elaine, and really excited and happy to be here and really looking forward to learning together. Like Elaine mentioned, my name is Kenneth Lin. I go by she, her pronouns. I'm an Asian woman. I have medium length black hair, and I'm wearing a dark green shirt right now. And I identify as Chinese immigrant settler woman. Was not born in this land. And right now, I am the director of services at a East Asian, Southeast Asian community mental health organization called Hong Folk Mental Health Association. So we're the only Asian community mental health organization that provides a continuum of services. And what that means is, with our largest program being our case management service, working with folks with persistent mental illness through one-on-one support. And then all of our staff speak an Asian language and English. And so our clients coming in do require that linguistic support, with linguistic and cultural barriers being one of the largest reasons that they do come for services at our organization. Today, I hope to bring in a service provider perspective, social worker in background, psychotherapist in background, and did some of my training during my social work school in children and youth inpatient traumatic brain injury unit. And so, yeah, I just looking forward really to bringing. Oftentimes, I find disability separates, or at least our service sector separates mental illness and addictions with developmental, intellectual, or physical disability. So I'm excited that we're learning together by bringing those topics. And then during the pandemic, I did some work with advocacy for anti-Asian racism. And so hopefully bringing also that systemic lens and racial justice lens in. Thanks, Elaine.
Thank you. The racial justice stand is very important for us, like to look at the issue of disability. Thank you, thank you. The last speaker is Nicholas Davis. Nikki is an award-winning journalist and writer with 38 years of experience in radio, television, and print. He is currently the Executive Director of Equity and Inclusion at CBC, having previously managed program development. Nick spent 28 years at CBC as a reporter and producer, notable making Metro Morning Toronto's top morning show as senior producer. He has covered Olympics, taught journalism, and has a diverse background in publishing, crime reporting, and hosting. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Elaine. My name is, as you heard, Nikki Davis. I'm a black man. I've got a completely bald head by choice. I shave it off all the time. I'm wearing glasses. I'm also wearing a black shirt, a long sleeve shirt with some writing on the front of it. I am an immigrant here. I immigrated to Canada back in the '60s. I'm an older person than I actually look, but I've been here since the '60s. In Canada, I immigrated from Jamaica. I identify as a Jamaican man. Um, I guess I'm here because, first I'll talk a little bit about myself and my connection to people with disabilities. My little sister is a person with a disability. She was born that way. She's around 50 now. She requires care. She can't speak. She cannot articulate herself. She has all kinds of other health issues. And I was fortunate enough to grow up with her. And so I have an appreciation for her experience. So it's not my own lived experience, but I've been near that experience and have some real thoughts around how the system and how systemic issues have actually impacted her ability to be the best version of herself possible. So obviously have a care about that. And at the CVC, I'm responsible for creating two programs. I mean, I create many other different programs in my role as executive director, but two that I'm pretty proud of are one is the on-air program for people with disabilities, and it's a program where we hire somebody for around 6 months to produce a radio show that gets broadcast nationally, and we hire people from the disability community to produce these programs. And these programs don't have to be about disability or their disability. It's just an opportunity for us to develop a pool of people because we think it's a gap in our staffing that we don't have a lot of people with disabilities who are on air. And so we're trying to develop a pool of people who can actually work as broadcasters and be on air. So that program's been in existence. This is our fourth year, just starting our fifth year of it in September will be our fifth year of that program. And then the other program we have is a program called CAPE, which is the CBC Abilicrew Program of Excellence. And it's been created in conjunction with one of our ERGs, which is we have an ERG called Abilicrew, which is our employee resource group for people with disabilities. And they, in conjunction with us, created another program that's a 6-month program where we bring in people from the disability community to work in all different facets at CBC all across the country. And the beauty of this program, which is going into its 8th year of this program, is that many of the people who go through the program end up staying at CBC and continue to work there. And so what it's done is helped us, improve the number of people with disabilities who actually work at CBC and have employment there, but it also has helped our company have a better understanding of what it is and how we can support people with disabilities, and actually helped us with our hiring practices around what was it about these programs that allowed us to find these people with disabilities who do excellent work at CBC, and why are we not implementing those same criteria or qualities that led to that into all of our hiring at CBC. So that's the challenge that's in front of me right now. So thank you, Elaine. I'm excited about being on the panel, and I'm here basically to share insights from the national public broadcaster's perspective on what it means to foster inclusion. And I'm also here to learn from the invaluable experience of the people in this community and the people on the panel as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think you just mentioned inclusion is so important. We can see the program really bring the institution change, right? So, and I think this is really important. So yeah, we have amazing panel today. So today the topic is talk about like community support for people with disability. And I think this is very important, like for us to discuss a bit more about what is disability. How do you understand disability? Yin, may I invite you to share your insights first? Like what is disability means to you? Yeah.
Okay, what disability means for me now, when I had when I was fully sighted, I couldn't care less and knew nothing about disability. It's only when I myself acquired it, I guess it's a genetic thing that gradually losing my eyesight due to a genetic condition that I started thinking, oh my, this is not just temporary. This is permanent and it's going to get worse. Of course, the very first thought is there's something wrong with me. I have a terrible problem, a genetic problem, physical, sensory. And therefore I cannot do this, I cannot do that. And of course, that leading to not only low self-esteem, but also, just sort of internalizing a lot of the common discriminatory views towards people with disabilities that we're victims, tragic victims of some sickness. We need to be fixed. So constantly people are sending me emails and saying, hey, here's a cure. Maybe you can try this. Maybe you can try that. A lot of which I did try. Went all over China getting acupuncture and this and that. But only to come to realize that, yes, I am going to live with this disability. And then I started learning as well that disability is not a person's fault per se, but there's that sort of interplay between one's functional limitation, for me is eyesight, with what's going on in society. So we talk about attitudes, right? That negative attitude that makes my disability even harder to deal with, but also functionally, right? If you give me a piece of paper, no, I can't read it. But if you send me a document in a digital format that's accessible, for sure I can read it through, my earphones. So I think there's that social aspect, social determinants of our condition. Sometimes our disability came from our experiences in our environment, but sometimes the environment itself presents a lot of barriers and challenges for us. It's not just our own functional limitation, our disability. So I began to realize, I am a whole person. This blindness is only one part of me. I've got so many things else great about me. You know, I've got a very good mind. I've got good education. I've got loads of work experience. Like, for sure, I can contribute still to society. So beginning to see that disability doesn't have to overshadow everything about me, that I am a person that's got so much more besides a disability. And this disability actually can be turned around to be used for good. Right now that I am more understanding of people who are marginalized or who face barriers and challenges, I understand what it is to be a person with a disability. I have that drive to say, how can we do more to give people equal opportunity? So my blindness helps me uh, to develop new skills, but also to have greater motivation for contribution, for making a difference. And finally, I think today I arrived at this stage where I am proud of who I am, including being blind. I don't hesitate to tell people I'm blind. Everybody say, she's visually impaired. Oh, she's a bug. Trying to sort of dance around the word blind. I am blind. That's all you can say. I'm blind. And being blind is not a disgrace, it's not a shame, it's not even a defect. In the way that we all got something that we can't do very well, right? So a person may not identify as having a disability, but surely I sometimes I am much more effective, more systematic, and more productive in what I do because of my other skill sets than somebody who may be fully sighted. So I just want to say that disability is part of my identity. I can be proud of it. I can use it for not only my advantage, but society as a contribution to society. And I am definitely proud to be a person with a disability, and I don't allow those negative views towards disability um, sort of affect me as much as when at first when I realized I was losing my eyesight. So it's a life journey, but disability does not have to be a bad thing. In fact, it could be a good thing because it's how you use it, how you live with it and make, turn it around for good. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, in this powerful message, right? Remind us like disability doesn't mean that it's like bad thing, and also remind us like how the society environment create a barrier for many people. And I think that your message is so powerful. Thank you. And Yumi, I think I don't know whether you can also share. I know that you are also organize the disability prize, so that maybe you can also share about like how you understand disability. And thank you, Yin, again. Thank you, Humi. You want to share a bit of your insight too?
Yes. I can't agree more of like what Ian said because Ian articulate like said a lot about good insights, important insights about what disability means to us. Um, Especially, so I want to share more about my personal experience. It's with my disability, my identity of disability. So I was born with this condition. So I was born with disability, but when I was growing up in Asia, I grew up in South Korea, and then I was in denial. I never used the word disability or blind for myself because also my parents, they told me you are not disabled because the word disability has so much like negative connotation. It's like it's such a bad word. Like you have this like very bad like degrading image of person of disability. So you did I worked so hard myself, like studied the extra hours after school, which was inaccessible for me. So the school system was not accessible. They didn't provide me any accessibilities, but I worked extra in order to compensate, to show that I'm not disabled. So that was also like school system in Asia. I guess a lot of Asian countries share this similar systemic kind of issues, but in South Korea it was super intense. So you have to be excel in school, otherwise like parents are be so worried about your future. Anyway, so I grew up in this environment, and then I failed in the end because like I couldn't um do well in the school system, which was not accessible. So I ended up going to special school, like for blind and partially sighted kids. That is where I met so many other kids who has disabilities, different blindness, or like many kids, they grew up in different environment, different classes, and different these types of disability. They all had a visual disability, but they had a different, like they had like have more than one disability. So but still back then I was in denial. Still we all together sit together, and then we said that, oh, we have visual impairment, we have challenges in visual way because of our eyesight, but we don't have disability. That was our discourse. But after I went to university, and I came across with some groups like disability right movement, groups of people who studies disability studies together, and it kind of like changed the whole my narrative about my life and how I view myself. So it kind of shows us like disability is actually, and being blind, being disability, having disability is not a bad word, and like we really have to destigmatize the word disability, and it can be a part of identity, and then also it's a human condition. Having a disability is a part of being human, because we humans, we are all born different with different biological and cultural and like differences. So it's part of it. So the problem is the society is built in certain specific way that kind of like makes some people struggle more and like be dehumanized and devalued because of the social systems and our belief system. That is like, that was really empowered me, that idea of like disability is not actually good bad thing. And after I came to Toronto, I missed like finding my own group of people, like because there's no one around like me when I just moved here. And I joined this group later on. I met some like my friend who was the organizer of Disability Pride March. So I started going every year, and right now I'm one of those organizers. So it's a group like people who kind of like or allies of people with disabilities, and then we get together every year to do march, and we talk about our social issues, political issues, and as well like one of the reasons that like the community is very like one of the most important things for people with disabilities, we are so isolated in this ableist world. So being like ableism means like just you're being having disability by itself, you are so devalued from the beginning. Like so many people also internalize this feeling of like devalued, I'm not good enough. So it's a very important to find your own group of people. And then we are like in Disability Pride March, we are claiming that actually disability, we are proud of being disability, but it doesn't mean that I'm being proud of having my medical condition, because disability is not my medical condition. It's like I'm proud of like having this identity and then living my own life with my different ways. That's what, and there are of course challenges, but that's is part of why we are being proud of, because we are living together and we are fighting to make things better for our like systemic barriers. So that's one of the reasons that we are doing that. So I am also inviting everyone here, like we're doing in July 5th this year. Further details, I can send like information later. So I'm inviting everyone here, or these people who identify as a people with disabilities or allies or family members. It's a really great opportunity to come out and support the community. Also, our Disability Pride March, we decide that one of our core principles is disability justice. This means that leadership by people with disabilities. So also the problem is like we are always told that what to do or what we can do or why we cannot do by able-bodied people who don't have disabilities. So like agency, reclaiming our agency is very important. So the leadership should be by people with disabilities. And this is going to be a space for people with disabilities, but allies, of course, are welcome to join and support us. Yes.
Thank you, Yumi. That's also very powerful message, and particularly remind us, our understanding, our view on disability can be changed, and particularly by interact, building the community, learning from other people, and so really, really great. Like you share, like the disability pride, and so and also like you remind us the importance of building community, right? Maybe later on can share more how we can find our community, how we can build a community. And thank you so much, Yumi, again. So, and I would like to invite Nikki. So you have done a lot of work, like and on this area, so that how you understand disability and how you understand your understanding of disability actually inform the way you do the work, or like yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Well, for me, my understanding of disability comes from having a little sister who was born a disability, and when I was growing up with my sister, and I'm probably around 12 years older than my sister. Um, I thought it was like I felt sorry for her. Like I thought, oh my goodness, this poor baby. She cannot talk. She can't communicate. Everyone has to do stuff for her. I used to feel sorry for her. So we used to like treat her with kid gloves, and we used to like really take care of her because she has four brothers. And we tried to our best to. To me, it was something that I felt we had to kind of support her and help her through by just doing things for her and trying to help her all the time. And as she got older, and as you know, we grew up having to deal with the system and getting support for her. I started to understand disability a different way, and to me, I started to understand it more as um, seeing all the societal barriers and the attitudes um, that were actually the focus of the challenges that my sister really had weren't really her disability. Her disability wasn't the challenge. It wasn't the problem. It was the societal barriers and the attitudes or how people treated her. And that's what really the disability was. I think I just changed my whole frame at that point. I was probably around 19 or 20 when I changed my frame about it. And so from that point on, I mean, for me, it was really about confronting ableism and finding out and actually trying to deal with the discrimination and the social prejudice against people with disabilities. Because I've seen it against my sister, and realized that it's that systemic, the system that was in place to not support her for all of her greatness, because she is an amazing person, has an amazing personality, and is actually the life of our whole family. And but for a long time, I used to feel sorry for her, and now I'm actually feel very joyful for having her in my life. But I really am disappointed in the at the time growing up around how discrimination and social prejudice against people with disabilities really shaped and really hurt her even more. And so part of the thing for me has always been dismantling, trying to dismantle those systems, or trying to find ways to navigate around those systems so we can help my sister, you know, and help her because for me, it's like, and even in my work at CBC, I'm always trying to promote like inclusion in the way where, um, especially ensuring that people with disabilities are not just accommodated for, but are fully integrated into all the opportunities and celebrated for the contributions here at the CBC where I work. But it means, you know, again, trying to remove the systemic barriers because they exist in my workplace, right? You know, and then part of your people's attitudes about working with people with disabilities. It's part about do we have all the support systems in place so that if we hire people with disabilities that they can actually be their best. And my job is trying to get to minimize those things and trying and help support people past those things. You know, are people getting equitable opportunities? People with disabilities, you know, and are we amplifying their voices? You know, I mean, and making sure that they're heard, they're seen, they're respected, and they're treated as fairly as everybody else. And so that's the challenge I have in my workplace. I think with some of the programs we've created, we have helped to a degree. We have a lot more work to do around supporting people with disabilities, and to me, one of the biggest things again is if I bring in somebody with a disability to work on a program, like work on a current affairs show where they're actually a researcher, if they're a producer, I have to educate the whole team around, you know, how to actually work with somebody with a disability because of the attitudes that exist within some of the places we have. And so it's a big challenge. It's very fulfilling work for me because I think we've done such great work at CBC. Like I said, we have a long way to go, but I really have shifted from feeling sorry for my little sister to really trying to fight for her right, just to be able to exist in society and be included in everything. And I think that's the way I take a look at, and that's the way I understand disability now at the age I'm at now. And to me, it's not the disability is not the negative thing. The negative thing is how people with disabilities have to experience the world that we live in. And so I'm trying to hopefully change some of the systems so that they experience the world in a much better way.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I believe like in the the adults of audiences, parents are also educated, they may also feel the same way, right? They feel the discrimination society, they feel there is like a lot of barrier and problem in the system. So maybe when we come back, so that we would like to invite you maybe give some example how you actually can remove like some of the barrier, how to like create a different understanding and also like how to create the system differently that then the people can be respected and also they can participate in the way meaningfully, right? So and thank you so much. Like, and Kenneth, like, how about you? Like, as a service provider, so perspective, and how do you understand disability? And thanks again, Nikki. And so, like, Kenneth, would you like to share some of your insights? Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to follow. Just want to also say, so honored to be alongside this panel with Nikki, Yumi, and Yin, as you've shared your lived experience and so clearly articulated. But I think from a social work service provider perspective, it's very much that juggling of there's the medical model and then there's the disability justice model, which I've heard from all three um, um, the speakers, where on the one hand, especially for mental illness, mental health, having the diagnosis opens up a lot of doors to services, to access to resources. And so, on the one hand, you kind of need that medical model, that diagnosis in this current system. And then on the other hand, is when that is all it is in labeling and becoming the only identity of an individual, as we've heard already, that's where a lot of the systemic, almost the environment that sets up the system becomes the problem. And that's why adopting that disability justice perspective is ever so important because it's really a natural part of human diversity. And so, really, as I think of disability, what I'm think often about is this invitation to question in society what is considered normal and what so-called normal and what is so-called abnormal and who gets to say what is normal, what is not normal. A lot of the times, what gets thrown around in service provider, social worker, social services work is this word of functioning. So, this piece of um, an individual having a job or a house or home and a friend, these three things, so-called somehow is defined as you're a functional human being in this world, when it really does get, makes us question, right? What does that mean to be useful, to be economically producing? Is that really a capitalistic way of looking at are you helpful or not? And so I do question that, right? When it comes down to it, that job, the home, the friend, is there more to that really? And so, really, the problem isn't in the body or the mind. It's really, again, the barriers that society creates. And it couldn't be said better than what Yin, Nikki, and Yumi already just shared.
Thank you. You remind us, like, particularly how, people as a human being have this intrinsic value, right? Instead of like need to be judged under capitalism, how we function. And I think this is a very, very important reminder. And then I think many speakers have already touched on, but I think it would be great if you can also share. And I think the audience, some of them is also like struggling. What are some of the key challenges you find faced by community? And many of you have mentioned like the system, but it would be great if you can give like some example, the challenge like overall, and also particularly faced by parents or caregiver, all the people want to give support, right? So maybe Yin, do you mind I invite you to on that first? Yeah.
I think you've heard from Yumi and myself that um, sometimes you just don't know where is my community, whether if as a person with a disability, where are the people who have the same experience as I do? Or where are the services, the organizations that can actually support and help me, whether it's education or a job or recreation or just, having that relationship, friendship. Um, I would say start with one, right? Maybe you heard of one, whatever disability organization or service organization, and keep asking. Like if you start with an organization that serves the mental health community and you have a different set of needs is, oh, well, where are the employment services that help me do this, right? So everybody knows five more other people or other organizations. So that's how I started. I started joining one organization that had some kind of peer support group. I joined them, and hearing people talk about another organization, I went and joined that and found out what they did, and just gradually learn more. So I think not to be to feel that you don't know, but start with one and just keep asking. I think that's how the challenge how I dealt with the challenge of not having community. The second thing that I noticed is that segregation. If we're talking about the Asian community, Chinese people would like to stick by ourselves. We like to go to Chinese restaurant and nothing else. Sometimes we have to say, well, if the community that I need is not in this existing community, break out of it, right? I did not find a Chinese blind peer support group at the beginning for the longest time, but I found, other uh, sort of support groups for the blind and partially sighted people. So I think not to feel that you have to stay with one kind of, however you define community. And same thing among the disability groups. You've heard Kenneth say, some people think mental health is mental health, physical is disability is this way, while blind people's over there and deaf people over there, and I think we I'm seeing, that sort of getting together, right? Understanding that we can mutually support each other. And beyond the disability community, I want to support the 2S LGBTQ. I want to support the the anti-Black racism groups. I want to support other, marginalized groups, and yet sometimes feeling that they also perhaps lack the understanding of accessibility, equal opportunities for people with disabilities. So when I join them, I don't sort of criticize them, but I remind them, hey, people with disabilities do exist in your racial group, in your cultural group, or in your gender diversity group, right? So I think just widening our definition of community because break out of it, bring together that synergy, that linkage. We do have a lot more similarity than differences, um, and go beyond the community that you started with, and find out, because they do exist out there, whether it's cultural or disability focused.
Thank you. And then you really give the good example about like the importance of finding community and also the challenge. And I don't know whether you can also share a bit more, because I think this is really great, to go out to find the community. But I know today we also have a lot of parents. Sometimes the parents, I think before we check briefly about that, really eager, really want to protect the children, and then seeing like the children grow up, have more autonomy, agency. So there is also the challenge, and particularly is like, okay, I want to go out to find my community, but at the same time the parents may have a lot of worry. I don't know, what do you think about that, and any like insights you can share with people with disability, and also like the parents and caregiver about, sometimes we find this is a kind of like tension, or like so I don't know,
Hmm.
want to share.
Um, I have to say, not being a parent myself, that I probably should not be the one to speak on this. However, I did work with the school board for certain projects, and what I hear from the teachers is that, as Yumi may have mentioned, that some parents may be overprotective, and wanting to do the best for their children, so end up doing everything for their children, right? I mean, really, go out and make all kinds of arrangements so that there's that support, and which is fine. But I think we do also want to. I mean, if you want to find, parent support groups, I'm sure they're there. And start with your school, right? Ask your school board. How can I connect with other parents of who may have children with disabilities, and then also be that advocate. Parents are the greatest advocate for access and for education. I've spoken, speak to the trustees, speak to the school councils and school boards. However, with children, I work at George Brown College, where we also have students that came out of the high school system being totally supported, and then in a high school, I mean, in a post-secondary school, a college or university, you're very much on your own. You better, get the support. No one's going to hold you by your hand and, take care of you in every classroom. So I think building that, as Yumi said, that independence in some way, that self-agency, that start letting your child at whatever age appropriate level to say, let him or her speak for himself. Let him or her make the decisions. Let him or her choose. Let him or her try new things and not always hover over them. Of course, depending on the age, so that they can develop their own skills to manage their disability, and also they have their skill to self-advocate. They really need that as they get older. They need to speak up. They need to, ask for that accessibility support, as a teenager or as an adult. So I think that balance between how do I support and yet I don't take over. I don't speak for them. I don't do things for them. That's how I see what parents could think about.
Thank you. Reminds like between how I do support, but not like take over, or speak for them. And I think this is very important. Yumi, do you want to like have anything you want to like talk about? The challenge faced by the community overall, like a parents, caregiver. Yumi, you are mute. Thank you.
Yes. So I can just add on what Ian already mentioned. Mostly for the when I just I should to share more of my personal experience again, like, and personally, like, having a community, um like, you get community through your family, but at the same time, it wasn't easy for me to talk about my challenges about disability, having a disability, because of the lack of understanding, or the generational thing. I think in their generation they didn't have this chance to think it in through. So it was hard to like share my inner thought about my challenges. Or so I used to have this friends group that what people with disabilities, what we do is like you sit together and complain about the world, right? Like, you bonded through this, like, because it sucks. So that's what that was my main community. But after I came to Canada, the biggest one of the biggest challenge was like language barrier. And also my parents, I came with my parents, but at the same time, they didn't have enough knowledge or social connection, or also they had language barrier, culture is so different. So they stayed in their very small community, Korean community bubble. But it's hard. So I had to figure out on my own everything. So I had to get out of that community and find my own different community. So that I think that can explains about the challenges in the community, because like lack of the, I guess, awareness, one thing. And also when it comes, and so they there's not great, there's no much system that people share about resources or supports when it comes to providing some help for disability, relate to disability. Or support means not only like, technical support, it means like emotional support or understanding where this coming from, how, yeah. So it comes from like, so they didn't share with other people they knew. So even though they recognize any challenges, I mean, so you need to be very close to, yeah. Anyway, so it's hard to, that's one part. And I think when it comes to parents, I'm not a parent, and I just from a perspective of person who had a parent, I think I the important thing is also educate yourself. It's really hard because there's a lot of barriers sometimes, and people are overwhelmed with many other life. So, but at the same time, I think like there should be more support from the community to understand. So it's the educating yourself is not only like their job, parents' job. It's like whole community. I think we get come together and try to understand and how to improve enhance the agency of people with disabilities. So we have to unpack this ableism or thinking the idea of that person with disabilities, like if you don't excel in school, then it's just like you feel very not proud of your about your situation or kids. Like you have to unpack this issue about ableism and have to engage in this conversation more. That's one thing I can just say. Like as in any other community, Asian community is not perfect either, so we have our issues. So but it's also very diverse, so I can say like for whole Asian communities, but at the same time that was my experience.
Yeah, thank you, Yumi. So that, yeah, maybe when like we come back that we talk about the example, right? What is the example that maybe can also bring in that you can explain more, because I think many people are interested what is ableism, so that maybe you can also have giving more example to explain more to help people like how by understand ableism we can also like understand disability differently, and also how we can build the power in the community. Thank you so much, Yumi and Nikki. So particularly as a challenge, as caregiver, so and also in general, you also work with a lot of people face a disability. So what are the major challenge they are facing? Yeah, would you like to share some of your insights also? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And and I'm gonna piggyback on some of the things that you and me and Yin talked about. Just because as a immigrant here myself as a Jamaican, I think people from the Asian community can relate to some of the same challenges that my family faced. You know what I mean? Doing it. So from a parent and kind of caregiver role, one of the things that I understand you and me's point about intergenerational kind of clashes, right? You know what I mean? Like me and my brothers were younger and we thought differently about how we should be supporting and helping my sister compared to my mom, and her uncle, her brothers and her sisters were from a different generation. So we often clashed on what might be the best way to support my sister, advocate on behalf of my sister. Like we wanted to take her out. We wanted her to, like, we didn't see any, that we didn't have the kind of, I don't know if it's stigma or shame attached to it that my mom and her brothers and sisters had. For us, it was like we would just take my little sister everywhere, and they struggled with that. I mean, it was almost like they wanted to hide her, and they felt that was the way they could protect her, and we wanted to take her out and just have her be part of us. You know what I mean? And so I have some wonderful pictures of me and my brothers and my sister, at parks and going camping and stuff, and I just know how much stress that caused my mom and her brothers and sisters, because they thought that we couldn't keep her safe. So there's that intergenerational, that cultural thing that we had to deal with. The other thing as parents that we had to deal with too is, for my mom, it was like finding support, like just generally for my sister and for people who looked like my sister, who understood our culture as a Jamaican family, like, and understood what that meant. Because sometimes, well, many times the supports we got, people would come to our house and they would interview us and ask us all these questions that in our mind weren't relevant, because it had nothing to do with, they just didn't understand our community and our culture. And so for them, some of the things they saw in the house were problematic. For us, it's just part of our culture. And so it was very difficult for my mom to find the support that she needed of people who kind of understood what it meant to be a Jamaican young woman with a disability, as opposed to just someone who with a disability. And I think people in the Asian community can relate to that. I also understand the language situation that Yin talked about. Like my mom, when my sister was born, she spoke very deep patois, Jamaican language, and there's often miscommunication, and my mom didn't quite understand all of the English words and the big words they threw around. So there's language and communication issues that we had to deal with. You know what I mean? Like just getting information, like to support and filling out forms, all this kinds of stuff that we had to do. And remember, we were kids, we were my brothers, we were 10, 11 years old, we were little kids, so we couldn't support her the way we'd like to support her. But we had to learn really quickly, you know what I mean? And then the other thing I'd say from a parent's point of view is don't understand the system. And I think you and me talked about it. Don't really understand the network of support that existed at the time. And I'm talking about this is in the 70s. You know, the network of support system that existed to support people with disabilities, much less people with disabilities who are immigrants and from a different country and who come from a different culture. So for my mom, you know, I kind of felt that pressure for her, you know what I mean? And I kind of, and we kind of understood it to a certain degree. And so that's why my brothers and I ended up becoming, you know, a lot of times the main support and caregivers for my little sister, because we just got looked at things differently. And as we got older, we took on a lot more of that responsibility, you know what I mean? And so, you know, it's the cultural expectations, the language barriers, you know, understanding these complex support systems, also the demands, you know, like the demands of taking care of someone who requires 24-hour care. Um, it was a bit overwhelming for my mom, who was a young mom. And so it required all of us kind of chipping in and helping out. And my mom didn't rely on the system because she didn't understand the system. So we did a lot of that at home too. So those are some of the real challenges. And I think that, you know, as we got older and we understood the system better, which we were forced to, we were able to navigate it a little bit better. But really, we didn't start navigating that system fully and wholly until probably my till I was probably in my 30s and my sister was in her late teens and early 20s. You know what I mean? So it took us quite a while to figure it out. And there's still, even to this day, and my sister's 50 years old, there's still to this day, we still have challenges with the system, you know what I mean? And trying to figure out how my sister can navigate that system to get the support she needs. So I think many people in the Asian community can relate to a lot of the same things that we went through, because I relate wholeheartedly to some things that you and me and Yin were talking about as well.
And thank you so much. Like many of you talk about the intersection, right? Like of the challenges facing. Thank you so much, Nikki. So, Kenneth, you want to share more? Like, because I think you work with a lot of community is facing a lot of like challenge, and so you want to share.
Yeah, yeah. I think first and foremost, what we see and what we frequently call family members and caregivers are the unsung heroes of our healthcare system. They are the silent, the invisible, you could call, but the folks who are doing the work in making sure, obviously, their family members are showing up to appointments, making sure appointments are set up, making sure getting to appointments, and all of that. If you talk about cost of healthcare systems, how all of that is unmeasured. And so that as a starting point, I think is one of a really big challenge we see in caregiver burnout. And we have groups, especially because we're servicing the Asian community, family care, family systems, right? We stick together as families. And so we have specific groups that are for the different languages we work with for just family members as support groups. But I guess observation or reflection to share comes from when I was still a student and I was doing my placement at the acquired brain injury unit for children and adolescents. And I remember because it was an acquired brain injury, a very specific disability where almost overnight you go from someone who may be without a disability to now quite with one. And so we were working largely with parents and family members. And I remember so dearly one case that was a Chinese parent and the level of shame and self stigma that just overnight was put on. And of course, the challenges, the language barriers, the services, as Nikki mentioned, the system, entire professions just on learning how to navigate systems with families. And but to see that shame and that stigma, um, it was very quite obvious as a comparison because we had diverse household, diverse families coming through as patients and clients. And so that really got me thinking around this cultural competence of service piece and really a worldview piece as well. Um, Unique to mental illness and we're talking folks who are verbal, who can articulate their experience, um, even simply to say, or a lot of the experiences may come out as more somatic than sort of what we might call mood or emotional. And so to see that challenge in a worldview difference. So someone might say, I feel quite weak, or I feel that my heart is very tired, instead of saying something like the symptoms of, let's say, depression or symptoms of anxiety. And so that in itself, never mind the language barriers added on top of challenge, um, becomes that piece of how do we express, and especially in our healthcare system, things are fast, right? You have to, right, 15 minutes maximum, even with seeing a psychiatrist. And so we see a lot of that where clients come in, and a psychiatrist might be not the first person they would think of to go seek help. If, let's say, worldview wise, their spiritual belief is maybe, let's say, an angry ancestor or disharmony with any sort of ancestral spirits, then we're not going to a medical model to seek answers. And so some very sort of under pinnings of very difference in worldviews, and navigating even that on top of the systems that is already so complicated, we see as some challenges with the Asian families that come through.
So like you bring in the perspective of different worldview can be challenging, right? So but sometimes it's also like can be very inspiring and also like give us a lot of strength, right? So and I think we talk a lot about the challenge, but we know that the community have been doing a lot of work, like many of you have mentioned some of them already. And I think the audience may be also very interested, like is it any example like or initiative demonstrate, the community strength and power? And I think this like panel also want to share more resources, to the audience, right? So that like feel free if you know any organization or new resources, like maybe you can also give some example. And like I will also try to like put the link of like some of the organization, or you can do it. And so or like you can name those organizations so that like to help the community know like what are the example initiative that to demonstrate community strength and power. So Yin, may I go back to you? About
I just want to piggyback on what Candace said about this worldview,
yeah.
and I totally see that, in the Asian context of attributing to some spiritual, cause for our disability. I became a Christian in my teens and was heavily involved in the church. And when my eyesight just got worse, it's a religious view. I don't know. Then again, that sort of, and I had to really struggle with that because some churches feel like, no problem, we'll just pray for you. Well, looking for that supernatural healing, and when I don't get it, oh, is it because I'm such a bad person? I just didn't deserve it. Who knows? So I think that that cultural or sort of religious aspects can come in. But I do want to address that resilience, that strength. The Asian community, we are very family oriented. We care about a community. We extend our care, support to friends and families beyond. And hey, when I see a Chinese person, man, immediately, even though that person is a stranger, I feel like, we got to be friends. I think that's where a lot of Asian, or for me, Chinese people who just started their own, right? This Chinese pastor decided, he's met quite a few Chinese people with sight impairments. Well, he started, what did he call it? VIP, visually impaired people, or very important people, whatever. He used the acronym VIP. And he does his, meets people people, say at a sort of location in Scarborough, and they meet every month, and it just really grew to even they start, opening up a cafe where people with sight impairment are hired and working. So I think that impetus, we're like, we're entrepreneurs. We're gonna start our own thing, being immigrants and all. Another friend of mine, I met her at the sort of advocacy group. She just wasn't into advocacy, but she really cared about building that sort of bridge between East and West culture, East and West understanding. So she started her own group, and got that charitable status. And now, but you see, she went beyond. Like she joined force with non-Chinese, non-Asian professionals, people who can, provide that sort of Western sort of perspective on business, on whatever topic they wanted to explore. So a monthly group, and where people join and talk about cultural differences, talk about, communication differences and things. And that, I think she calls it East and West connection. And I'll just give you one more example. I know a friend of a friend. Anyway, she's a social worker. She works in the uh, anyway, she noticed that a lot of Asian nail salons and women who work in there, just they're just bombarded by this fume, right? That leads to, uh, health issues. And she just started a project. We're going to focus on do a project. I got a grant. And every nail salon she passes by, she would just go in there and start talking to the workers like, hey, did you know there's a project? So I think I see that spirit among the Asian community, the Chinese community, that that when there's enough impetus, they can just do it. But I also see that people are smart, or I see the resource across cultures, right? Like join hands with non-Asian communities, and just say, let's work together on such and such a project. And when I was with the advocacy group, I did the similar thing. I saw that need for people with that employment issue, just underemployed or unemployed. So I said, this is terrible. I am underemployed. I am unemployed. And what are people doing about it? So together with that community advocacy group, who are not Chinese, but we cared enough that we got a City of Toronto grant and started a project that lasted at least 3 years. And I think so there are times when you can just work within your own culture group and do something if you can't find the service organization. But then there is also, crossing that cultural barrier and join hands with other cultural groups because you have the same passion, the same goal. Hope that answers a little bit if I didn't grow.
Inspired, we can create our own, not only community organization, even the business, and I remember like and also like the intersection, and also the connection with also other community. So, and I think this is so important, holding hands with others. So thank you so much. And so maybe next, Yumi, you want to share more? So that maybe because of the time, so I will also invite you, like not only giving the example, but also like any message you think that like how other people can make a difference also, right? So
Oh.
like when you share like what is the great initiative you see, and also like how people can also make a difference if they want. Yeah. Yumi, you are mute. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so for the strength of the community, it's just so I'll talk about just more than like a little bit broader than just Asian community, but because and so I met actually many people that gave me a lot of support and made friends, they are Asians, but I met them through like places. So for example, I went to Alliance for Equality of Blind Canadians, and I met Ian. So sometimes even though we are not stay in the same cultural community. So if the person is Asian, like sometimes it feels like there's a little bit of like a proximity, like you can feel like connected. It's easier sometimes to feel connected, and then I feel like we can support each other, and we have more to talk about. So I have another like Asian friend, and Yen was like also it's because also at the same time it's very rare to meet someone who is a recent immigrants or Asians or who has actually say similar types of disability. So when you meet someone, then it feels like very special. That feels like that's where you start like building a community, even though it's not only in your cultural community. So I met a lot of people who has a different kind of like, connections. But a lot of those people are racialized and have certain types of experiences. So they understand. You feel like you don't have to explain, and also have disabilities. So that is very important to not just stay inside of your community, but at the same time, like, the expand it so that you can be bridge between different communities in a way. Especially like disability justice community, disability right community, and your own cultural community. I think it's important to kind of make a bridge between them, because sometimes like if you don't share, like if you don't do that, then it's very isolated. So I think yeah, so kind of creates a crossing kind of movement in a way. Yes. Also like the community that I'm in, Toronto Disability Pride March, we the one of the important thing is like we centers on the experience of like racialized folks. So try not to be, some like people, even though all of you identify, like all of us identify as having disability, some people take up more space in Canadian society because of like this, you are closer to the mainstream culture, or like you or have this generational like connection like networking skills, whatever reason. So some people it's easier to navigate or advocate for yourself. But if you're not like from the country, like, or you're more recent generations, so then it's harder to navigate. So I think it's important to find like, who have similar experiences, like either like Asian, you don't have to have like same nationality, but like you kind of still have like similar, you understand what it's like to having a parent who has these types of worldviews and stuff. So you don't have to explain. So it's important for me to find a group that kind of give me this space for people who have these experiences, intersecting like experiences.
And again, like remind us, like the connection is so important, right? So like that people can have like so many like different common identity, not necessarily only disability, right? So then that's
Yeah. For
very
example, like some people like I met from different groups, even though like English is their first language, their parents are have like issue with their English skill, like competency. So they understand like, how it's like having a parent or yourself like having language barriers, or how it can affect, also at the same time having disability, how it can like affect your chance of getting a good job, how also ableism comes in. So if you are Asian, both Asian, like and having disability, like you're less likely to be approached for same chance opportunities. Like people get it, like so they try to support each other, give each other more chances. I think that's a very important part as well.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Yumi. So I just shared the link of Toronto Disability Pride on the chat, so and so that you can have the website and that to get the information. And so Kenneth, do you want to share more about like the strength you witness, and also like particularly the resources, right? So like particularly you guys work with like East Asian and Southeast Asian community, so that any resources you think that may be useful for the audience. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll start with the resources piece. And what I'll say is it's often dependent, obviously, of the need, right? Because there's such a range of needs here. But generally speaking, um, all service providing agencies' intake lines have training where they can't just tell you, no, we can't serve you. They're trained, and this is part of our like social work, social services training, that even though the organization can't directly help you, they are to provide an alternative list of resources, at least one or two. And so I would say, in terms of a tip for navigation, service system navigation, is to make those phone calls to intake. And because when you can directly speak with a service provider, you can tailor a little bit of what it is exactly you're asking for, what your needs are. They may or may not be helpful, but at least you can express that need first. At Hong Fook, we service 5 languages: Cantonese, Mandarin, Vietnamese, Korean, and Cambodian, and English. And when folks call in for, and that in terms of mental ill, like our services can't support, as we're only supporting mental illness, frequently we do refer out to Community Family Services Ontario, CFSO. And so that's our top, just because they have that cultural lens, cultural piece. And then depending on different organizations, they may also have already language specific staff that you can also, so the intake staff again can most help you with, just because things change so much. Um, and then things being programs and services, right? They're going on cycles, and then it might change. But also to not be afraid to ask for interpreters. It may not always be your best experience. That's the truth of sometimes things being lost in translation. But you do have the right to ask for language interpretation, even at a so-called mainstream English speaking service agency. And then I remember very clearly, as an organization, we had worked with an organization called Under the Banyan Tree Center in Markham. And each week, a few days a week, I remember there would be folks from their organization coming in to help us with our facilities. So it was, in a way, contracting out some facilities maintenance and cleaning to this group. And so I have really good impression of this organization, Under the Banyan Tree Center. But in terms of a message, I think Elaine had asked for that. Um, the organization I work at right now is around for 43 years. And 43 years ago, it was started by over dim sum, a conversation between a social worker, 2 psychiatrists, and other settlement workers. And it was through over a meal where they had said, we're just discussing, we're working with these clients, with these patients, and the system's not responding. They're not hearing the needs, they're not understanding the language piece. And out of that, Hong Fook Mental Health Association was born with a lot of volunteer support in the beginning. Before now, our biggest funder is the Ministry of Health, and so a government funded organization. But that took 43 years, from a grassroots over a meal piece around. And of course, there needs to be the capacity, the energy, and maybe connections, but ultimately the sense of the system isn't helping, or it's not responding exactly the way that we need the support. What can we do about it? And it started from, right, 3 to now we have a staff of 56. Not my story, but I get to be part of this spirit, this energy of this organization. And I learn every day with that resilience of the organization, and that pushing through and advocating, not just providing services. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I would like to invite Nikki. So because of the time, and I would also invite like all the speaker maybe can think about one action item. All the audience can. Many of you have mentioned a lot already, so that maybe after Nikki shares, so that each of you can share one action item what we can do. So Nikki, so you want to share like any like great initiative, and particularly through media, we know a lot of people learn a lot and get like connected because of that. I don't know, do you have like some example that can share?
Yeah, no, yeah, most definitely. I mean, I think as a public broadcaster and as being a journalistic institution, we do help shape the way people see the world or experience the world or view the world. And so, you know, I do think there are things that we could do and things that we have done. But before we could do anything, we had to educate people, you know, about, um, you know, to me, how people are experiencing us at CBC, people with disabilities, and how some of the things that we were doing could be harmful or could be seen as exclusive, like where we weren't being inclusive enough for people with disabilities. So we had to educate people first, which we did. We did a whole bunch of, and you know, I think Ken has talked about some of it. It's just you know, cultural. Yeah, she called it cultural compliance for the service provider. So we had to do cultural competencies for our leaders and our managers and the people who actually are going to manage people with disabilities, so they have a better understanding of the impact of the inclusion or the exclusion that we were doing was happening on people. So we did that first, and that required us to just review our policies. We had to mandate certain standards, accessibility standards in the company, and thanks to our ERG, which is called the Bill of Crew, who actually does a lot of work with our other ERG, our Asian Alliance ERG, in terms of actually making sure that we are thinking about and including people with disabilities in almost all of our policy making and especially in any advisory roles. And also, like when we're coming up with ideas, like you know that whole thing, nothing about us without us. I think we have to adopt that policy when we're thinking about how we're going to um, come up with initiatives and ideas that we think can support people with disabilities. And so sometimes we would do things and not consider it from the perspective of somebody with a disability. And so we have changed all that now. And so that has happened at CBC where I work. The other thing is like just simple things like, you know, I think about the word accommodations and how, you know, at one time, you know, we were very reluctant because to hire people with disabilities because we thought it would be really expensive to do the accommodations piece, and we had to educate people that it's actually not true. Like the thing is, we accommodate people without disabilities all the time. But we don't consider it an accommodation. Like when we change someone's work hours, say they come in a little bit later, or when we tell people they can get time off to go to doctor's appointments, to go to wherever they have to go, or when we say that we're going to switch people's shifts. Like those are accommodations we make for able-bodied people all the time, and we don't think about the cost of that, and we don't think about what that costs. So we had to change that. Say no, like they're actually, if you actually, we what we did is we did a cost analysis of what it costs to do an accommodation for people with disabilities, and people have different degrees of disability and different types of disability for sure. But in the end, it was actually cheaper than the accommodations or equivalent to the cost of accommodation for people with able-bodied people. So we had to educate people on that, like train our staff to just understand, you know, that their impression of things is actually not the way things are. And then the things we did, of course, was we started the ERGs for people with disabilities, and we started the ERGs for people from our Asian communities. We have an Asian Alliance ERG. Those are things and initiatives that we started at CBC to actually try and make a difference and to help people have a better experience at CBC. The other thing that we've done really well at CBC is just making sure that all of our content, well, and I think I can say safely now that 99% of all our online content is accessible content. You know what I mean? And I think it's important that, and I know that the accessibility office, which we just created around 4 years ago, we actually created an accessibility office around 4 years ago, that they were instrumental in making sure that every bit of content we had was accessible. And I mean, there's still a little bit of gaps in particular places, but those are small gaps that we will be closing. But even just thinking to me about like we've changed our hiring practices and our onboarding practices to make sure that we have accessible applications, we have accessible interview formats, and we actually have training and onboarding for people with disabilities that's a little bit different than onboarding for everybody else. So just thinking about those things all the time have really helped us. So we have tried our best, you know, as a corporation to, you know, raise awareness, do some training. I come up with initiatives that were, you know, initiated or supported by from the very beginning from people with disabilities. I'm going to give you a real example. That's kind of when COVID started and there's all this anti-Asian hate that's happening at like right across Canada. Um, we had some employees who were really struggling, like from a mental health perspective, had to cover these stories, who were the victims of some of this racism, and we had to, and we are with a service provider who provides mental health support for our staff, and that mental health provider who has, I want to say, a very full roster of social workers to help support our staff. There wasn't a single Asian support worker in their portfolio. And so we had to go change that and like say, well, that's not acceptable. You know what I mean? Like we have a community of people who work at CBC who've been harmed by, anti Asian racism. And we have nobody here who can support them. Like nobody at all, like who looks like them. We have people who can support them, but who looks like them, who can understand their lived experience, who can understand their cultural experience, and can talk to them and make them feel more supported. And so we changed it. So we actually went on and got more. We had them open up their roster and force them to hire people from with who are Asian, who were caregivers, who were psychologists, who were social workers, so we could provide support that the people wanted, the people who are looking for support. So that happened at CBC as well. And then the other thing, of course, is representation of people, of disabled people, and representing them accurately in the media. And I think we do a very, very, very well, a much better job than we did in the past of making sure that when we do those things, we actually consult disabled creators and experts when we're creating programs, especially content or programs about disability. And then we also try and promote civic engagement by actually making sure people have an understanding of how they can participate in any type of process we have at CBC that involves people taking a vote or actually doing polls and stuff like that. So we've done quite a bit. And I would, just before I hand it off back to you, Elaine, I just want to say I want to give you asked for a piece of advice or something I could leave people with, or a final message. But mine is that and I think Yin touched on it. I think Yun Me touched on it as well. It's to me, there has to be like, my message is one of hope and also a call to action. You know what I mean? I just wish that if you're trying to look for true equity and inclusion for Asian Canadians with disabilities or anybody with disabilities, it's got to be ongoing. It's got to be a continuous effort. There has to be a continuous ability to understand, and it needs lots of collaboration. So that's my call to action for people, is that they actually think about how they can do that. Like, make sure that the commitment is ongoing, that there's a commitment to learning and understanding, and that there's a commitment to collaborating. And so that's my message for everybody, Johnson. I hope that yeah, I hope people rise to that challenge.
Thank you. Powerful message. Hope. Like, yeah. And so because of the time, I think that maybe before to invite the speaker to give like the very powerful message as closing, but I would like to open to the floor. So because we have like a lot of participants here, thank you for your patience. I hope you can get some insights from the speaker, but please put in the chat if you have like any questions, so you would, or even like some of the message you want to share. Thank you, Kenneth, have shared the websites of Hanfolk and also the phone number with different language, and so the Hanfolk Mental Health Association. Thank you, Kenneth, for sharing these resources. And any like audience would like to ask any question or have any like feedback message for the panel?
I actually asked a question. If
Okay.
you don't mind, do you mind if I open my mic and talk about it?
Yes, please, Sheena.
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Gina. I'm uh, Asian, East Asian with Chinese feature, with black straight hair. I actually had recently, not recently, but when I went to when I in commercial breaks, there's an ad that really touched me. It's about a woman with a Down syndrome saying that, you think I can't drink a margarita, so I don't drink a margarita. You think I cannot read about Shakespeare, so I don't read a Shakespeare. So that ad really stuck on me, and it reminds me after today's webinar, because it's for us, it's for the public, we always have assumption on shaping different disability peoples, and shape what people feel allowed to. So like we might think that Down syndrome cannot work or something like that. So in a community setting, we as a community member or a friend, how can we challenge these unspoken expectations and build space where racialized people with disability are fully seen, included, and supported to live as their full self, like they can express themselves fully in a community setting?
I would like to talk about this. I think some of you touched on this, like about the expectation about agency. Like anyone would like to respond to that question?
I could respond to it from a since she's talking about a commercial or an ad, and I actually know the ad that she's talking about. There's actually a really good one about women in sports as well, which is the same kind of message. And I say what I know we can do as broadcasters is actually do a much better job of casting people with disabilities and casting Asian people with disabilities in our ads, in our content, in ways where they're just seen as regular people doing regular things. And we need to do a better job of that. And I think that's one of the challenges that we have to as a broadcasters find those opportunities, actually make them, not find them, make those opportunities where when we are creating ads and we are creating spaces, creating content to make sure that we actually are thinking about how are people showing up, who's missing, who's not in the picture, and then making sure that it's not only an accurate portrayal but one that's actually real because that is a very powerful ad you're talking about, Gina. So I know it. It's really powerful. It's a great ad. And it requires us to be intentional about what it is we're trying to do. And I think if we can just do a much better job of making sure that we are having people with disabilities or agents show up in just all of our content, in all of our processes, in all of our decision making, I think we will actually address that issue in a more real way and actually make people feel, like you said, feel like they're more fully seen, fully included, and supported. That they're more three-dimensional characters than these two-dimensional or one-dimensional characters that we often portray people from equity deserving groups as in the media.
Thank you so much. So
Yes. Thank you for sharing this. It's a very great example of like think how ableism works in, yeah, in many ways. Like people, like if you have a disability, especially like certain types of disability, like you are told by many people like what you can't do or what you can do. So I want to point out two things. Like for one thing, like it's because of the just assumption, like just beliefs that ableist assumption that people with disability, for example, like you can do certain things. But the another part is you can't actually do because of the there's nobody it like the system doesn't allow you to do that, but nobody wanna think that we can change the system or we can provide another way to do it. So or like if you have like intellectual disabilities or even like a blind people, like when you are trying to get a job, the employment service, they kind of the job that they're gonna offer you, like examples of like list of jobs that you can apply are very limited sometimes because of the one thing is like the assumption, then second is like because they like even service providers, they don't think twice that they can challenge these barriers with you. So there's a like systemic piece in it and problems. So I think we can think about it as a community together. How can we fight like these more underlying systemic barriers together? And I really appreciate what Nikki is doing for the yeah, changing the represent, yeah, to yeah improve these things in the media.
thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Yumi. Because of the time, so I have like see the response from Balashu. Thank you for all the speakers tonight. The many positive conversations. Oh, Heather Wong have a question. What is your perspective about the fine line and not reducing a person to their disability, but at the same time recognizing that their disability does shape their lived experience? So will you please give a very brief like who would like to answer the question? Yeah.
I can try to answer that through an example, Heather. When I was a frontline youth worker, I was working with a 12-year-old who had been just diagnosed with Tourette syndrome, which is a neurological disorder that may cause sudden, unwanted, and uncontrolled rapid and repeated movements or vocal sounds that are called tics. And so, what was interesting, and as an example, I don't know if it depicts that fine line of balancing, where suddenly the school social worker was able to access this organization that came in and did education for the classroom, this classroom of sixth graders, of what Tourette syndrome is, around what these tics are, and basically what, right, to not make fun of this young person, this client, this youth. I don't know if that depicts it, because then on the one hand, the individual still, because of Tourette's, got some services through our youth outreach worker who connected them with other services. But then this specific organization came in to provide education for a larger class. So awareness of, or the environment, or those social environment around this young person. And so it is absolutely in your question, that word fine line and that tension of, it's going to be always both that tension. But I think it's totally possible for recognizing both almost models, like the medical model and this disability justice model of everyone has a role as well through being learning, continuous education. So hopefully that helps as an example.
Thank you. And I think like today, so we try to bring in the knowledge and experience how we can, learn how to navigate, but also change the system, right? So and I think this is a very, very good example to show that, and so maybe I would like to ask like Kenneth and Yumi and Yin, like Nikki, you share already, but like any like last message, action item people can do and
Yeah.
the difference, yeah.
Just a final piece, I think it's, consider it an assurance, a validation, or consider it a reminder. But this piece around, we, that parents, that young folks, or that individuals with disabilities have the right to demand for access and accessibility. And so this keyword being demand. And so, and the right to. So consider it a validation and assurance. And that's my final piece.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I see Gina, Heather, and North Star say thank you. It's true, true. Yeah. Yumi and Yin, any
I
last? Yeah.
I want to say, because from the questions and apologies if I'm not reading the comments or questions quite right. When people without disabilities say, how can we challenge the system? How can we do this? And I want to say, no, no, no. Pass the mic to the person with the disability. Of course, if they're really young, or, that's one thing. But I think as much as possible, let the person with the disability take the lead. Um, in that, you look at any disability movement, they are led by people with disabilities. If anybody's going to challenge the system, it has to be people with disabilities. So non people with whatever non-disabled people, support by saying, listen to them, listen to what their experience. We do our learning, we do our homework in finding out what we can about whatever disabilities, but put the people put people with disabilities at the head of the parade. you know that they are the one that's going to speak, challenge the system, and demonstrate what they can and cannot do. I can never say to another blind person, you know what, because I can't do this, therefore you cannot do it. No, not even that, not even within the same disability, because we are so different. We are made up of so many parts that certain people allow or what don't mind, like I'm blind, I'm never going to go skiing, I'm never going to do those sports because that's not my interest. But other blind athletes, they'll just risk their life and do great things, right? So we don't know. We can't put people in a box. And I really want to emphasize that, first of all, if you're a person with a disability, you are valuable. There's nothing wrong with you. You are not a defective toy that somebody just messed up. No, embrace your disability, embrace who you are, and make the most of what you have, whether it's a disability or other parts of you that's fully, fine. You can use and reach out, like Kenneth says. Ask questions, ask for accessibility, ask for your rights to be honored, right? Just as a non-disabled person can go to a movie, I should be able to go to see a movie. Learn about our legislation, learn about your rights. And sometimes we don't know. That's why we don't ask for it. So a lot of self-initiative is needed. And I speak to people with disabilities. It's got to start with you. You cannot rely on somebody else to do it for you, because they will always misrepresent your needs, your desires, your goals, and your aspirations. No,
Thank you,
come
Yin. A lot
forward.
of response. We see a lot
I
of come up a very powerful
So
voice. Thank you. Like you me because of the
I love every single word that Ian just said, and I can't agree more. Yes, and the problem is like, and a lot of even like decision making about disability issues, policies, it's not made by people with disabilities, and were made by people with lived experiences. And also a lot of like social agency, like for people with disabilities, they're very like, there's sometimes some like people with lived experience, but it's very token sometimes, like not enough. So we need more and like representation, not in only in media, in actual real workplaces and like decision making area. And that's very, and also yeah, for me from this panel, it's also, I feel like I'm guilty of, like it's important to have a lot of conversation in our community. So I think I'm gonna engage more in our Asian community to build more going conversation about ableism, and how to, yeah, like raise awareness within our community and start from there for me.
Thank you. Thank you, all the amazing panelists. It's really amazing panel. So I just invite all of you to stay because I think we would like to learn how do you feel about the panel. I learned a lot of great inspiration, how we should have the hope centering, have the leadership from the people with disability, how build the community, all are very, very important message, how we need to change the system. And so now I would like to pass the time to Eleanor to do the pool. And thanks again for all the amazing panelist speaker. And thank you for all of you. Please stay, please stay.
Thank Thank you, Eileen, and thanks everybody for sharing your stories, your examples. I think tonight it was another amazing panel where we learned a lot about what's happening in in the community, including not-for-profit, a corporation. Like, there are so many individuals doing different things. And then one things that got repeated tonight again was that in order to overcome the systemic barrier that we have, we really need to have collaboration. We need to talk. We need to connect with individuals. And then I think that one thing that we did tonight is really vocalize what's happening in the community and how people have an effect on all of different situations through different ways. So I appreciate that, and I know that it's getting very late, so I want to jump to the final poll. As I mentioned before, we ask you a few questions before starting by asking what you know about this topic, and now basically we ask you the opposite question. So now we want to ask you only 2 questions, don't worry. How knowledgeable are you about community resources for Asian Canadians with disability after this panel? So how much do you learn about all these different community resources? And then the answer are from 0 to 5, 5 very much, and 0 not that much. And thanks all the panelists who shared a few links in the chat. We'll be sure that these will be also listed in the website of North Star Special Needs Society. And the second question is, how helpful was the panel in providing practical solutions to challenges faced by Asian Canadians with disability? And again, we have questions from 5 to 0. 5 is very helpful, and 0 is not helpful at all. So please reply. And
Thank you. And I also see the chat, like, thank you for sharing this valuable insight and stories. Thank you, Mia and Heatherong. Wonderful panel discussion and great event. Thank you. And North Star Special Needs Society, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much.
Okay. I want to just 1 second. I'm going to put in the chat the website of North Star Special Needs Society. So then you can check here directly. Okay, here it is. You can check here directly for the recording, and then if you have any follow-up questions or comment, feel free to connect with the North Star Special Needs Society, and I will be sure to help with the connections. And okay, it's 9 o'clock, and thanks again for being here. Thanks for being part of this amazing journey that we started on Sunday, and today was the last panel. We learned a lot about community and employment and education, and really the role that culture played on this. So I wish you a good night or a good evening or good afternoon, depends on where you are in Canada. And I guess I have to finish by saying, let's keep in touch and keep collaborating and communicating, because only if we collaborate, we can really overcome these systemic barriers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Kenneth.